And I remember laying in the hospital bed in the emergency room that I worked at, wondering what I was going to do for my family financially.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we had 2 kids at the time. We have 4 now. But at that time, I remember laying there in the hospital bed, just like, how am I going to provide for my family?
Yeah.
And something in my brain clicked. I said, if something like this was to happen again, I don't want to be in the same situation.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings podcast. And right now I am on site with Dallon Schultz. He graciously invited me to his studio. So it looks a little different than you guys are used to, but I'm happy to be interviewing with him today. He is the president of the Rev Equity Group and co-founder of Capitalist Pro. He is a multifamily investor and syndicator, and someone who I actually got to know from just being a part of a multifamily community, which he has been the spearhead for, I would say a community organizer. And so just welcome to the show, Dallon Schultz.
Thanks a lot, Tari. It's awesome, and I appreciate you coming down and your podcast. Listen to a few episodes. Like it's incredible what you're doing. I
appreciate that.
I'm just honored to be a part of it.
I appreciate that. Well, Lessons into Blessings really is to get people kind of off the fence into real estate. I started really young in my 20s, and just watching people through their journey, seeing people educate themselves, but just still sitting on the sideline, having the fear. So I'm just trying to, have everyday stories of people, just like myself and like our listeners, to be able to get people off that edge, right? And so I think what we're going to talk about today, systems and helping, aid investors in really being able to just have more time to be able to focus in on what they need to do, is incredibly important.
Love it. I couldn't agree more.
So with that, what got you off the fence? What pushed you down the pathway of real estate? And take a little bit down that journey for you.
Yeah. So what I've come to realize is that everybody has an individual. It's very individual.
Very much.
We might all want that goal of owning real estate, but how we get there is going to look different. For me, and what I've also come to realize is, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's usually a critical event in that person's life that gets them down that path that they've been wanting to go down. It might be a divorce. It might be losing a loved one. It might be getting fired from your job. Like, there's some major critical event that often triggers people enough to realize I got to do something different in my life. And for me, I had just graduated nursing school. I got my bachelor's in nursing. I was working in the emergency room, and my whole plan was to specialize in nursing and make a few $100,000 a year, and then get into real estate.
Right.
So mentally, I kept saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this, and then I'll get into it."
Yeah.
And a couple months into that career, I actually broke my tibia, my shin, playing soccer.
Wow.
And I remember laying in the hospital bed in the emergency room that I worked at, wondering what I was going to do for my family financially.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we had 2 kids at the time. We have 4 now. But at that time, I remember laying there in the hospital bed, just like, how am I going to provide for my family?
Yeah.
And something in my brain clicked. I said, if something like this was to happen again, I don't want to be in the same situation. Yeah. And so I started listening to podcasts. I started reading books, heard about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And after reading that book, 2 weeks later, we bought our first fourplex without any of our own money.
Okay, so you was like, we're going to jump way past single family and just jump right into multifamily.
And I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Like, I listened to that, and the fourplex opportunity presented itself. I didn't know the traditional path was single family and then small multifamily and larger. And I'm glad I didn't know that, because I probably would have limited myself. And so I've realized that there's kind of in order to jump, right? I think a lot of us walk up to that ledge and we take a peek over, and we're like, yeah, no, screw that. Like, I'm not going to go for it. I'm not jumping, right? And then there's some people that are running up to the ledge. They don't realize how high they are, and they have too much momentum, and they go over. So there's like this level of ignorance that gets them down that path, and they're like, well, I'm on it now. Let's just see where it takes us. And for me, that situation was that injury, that broken leg. Made me realize like that safe and secure job that I thought I had in the medical field wasn't.
Yeah.
Because what if something happened to me? So that's really what jump started me down the real estate
down
career.
the path of, yeah. So you jumped right into multifamily. I love that you skipped the single family game. What would you say to someone who they haven't started down the journey? Why would you tell them to jump to multifamily versus going the traditional route of just buying single families individually?
I think more importantly is to understand like where you want to be. I know very, very wealthy people that own large portfolios of single family, and they're doing way better than I am.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say necessarily that single family is better than multifamily. I have my opinions, but I know very wealthy people in every industry in real estate. So more importantly, I think what people need to figure out is where they want to be in 5 years. So if you want to be in multifamily, large multifamily 5 years from now, don't start in single family. And people, I think the mistake people make is they're like, okay, well, it's that stepping stone. I get that to an extent, but the types of investors you talk to for single family, the way you analyze single family, it's a completely different animal than multifamily. And so people go down this path and realize they're actually sometimes further away than if they had just started in that multifamily to begin with.
That's good.
So begin with the end in mind. So if you have clarity on where you want to be in 5 years, then work backwards and say, what do I need to do today? And if it was me, start learning how to underwrite multifamily deals. Start going to multifamily meetups. Maybe hospitality is a space you want to be in, or Airbnb. Don't start with multifamily. Start there if that's where you want to be in 5 years.
I think it's, I love that you said, understand where you want to be. I think understanding, because it's one of the things that when I'm talking to investors who want to get into different spaces, I'm really trying to understand what their why is, right? And what is it that they really want to achieve? Do they want to achieve cash flow? Do they want to achieve appreciation? Where do you see yourself? You're trying to replace your income, because all of those, and then what do you have available to you, right? Do you have a network available to you? Do you have cash flow? Do you have, money in the bank? Do you have, what do you have available to you? Because that might also determine not only what do you see yourself, but where can you start to continue to make progress toward where you want to be. So if you have a ton of money in the bank, you can possibly get into larger assets. But the multifamily syndication space, which we're going to jump into, you can be passive and invest with smaller amounts. Similar amounts that you'd get into single family, you could get into the commercial multifamily space by finding trusted partners and doing deals with them and still seeing the same benefits that you could see in the single family space. So I love the fact that you focus people in on really what their goals are. Now you are a multifamily syndicator, operator, fund manager. I mean, there's a million different names out there. Can you tell people just what that is? What is syndication? What is syndicating multifamily or managing a fund in general?
Yeah, so when I first got into real estate, I bought the fourplex. That's all I knew. I never knew about syndications. I didn't know about funds. The only time I heard of a syndicate was like a crime syndicate from like a movie or something, anyways. But so like that was new to me until I went to this conference and they were teaching about syndications and funds. And I think the easiest way, if this is the first time of one of your listeners listening to it or trying to wrap their head around it, think about an airplane, right? Syndication happens in every day of our lives. So an airplane goes from destination A to destination B. You don't buy the airplane, you rent a seat, and then everybody on the airplane pitches in for a fractional price of the ticket, and you can travel from point A to point B a lot quicker and faster, and you do it together. And so when it comes to a syndication or a fund, it's kind of the same idea. We're all boarding this plane made of apartments, and we're all buying a ticket at a lower cost. We're not buying the plane. We're buying a seat within the plane, and then together we're moving forward into that apartment.
I've never heard anyone break it down like that. So, that's a good concept.
I mean, when you think about a syndication, that's really what it is. You're buying fractional ownership, and because of that, there's more diversity. There's less risk involved because again, you're not putting up the capital to purchase the plane. You're just renting a seat along the way. And then if done right, if done properly, then you get a good return on your capital.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
And you want to make sure you have good pilots flying the plane.
Yeah, that part. I do not want to go down on this plane. So, yes, let's talk about that vetting capital. I really do want to walk people through what a day in the life, because, I have investors that are investing certain deals that I'm finding and putting together. What do you believe is important for them to know if they're walking through a day in the life of a syndicator? Because I don't think everybody knows, okay, like what do they do? Are they just, you're finding us
a whole lot of nothing. That's what they think.
That's exactly what they think. It's like, we're doing a whole lot of nothing. Walk them through a day in the life of what a syndicator does, or an operator.
A good syndicator and a good operator spends their entire day looking for a reason not to do the deal. Because at the end of the day, it's their investors' capital at risk.
Absolutely.
And so when a deal is presented, a lot of times what the potential passive investor doesn't see is all the deals that operator said no to.
Yeah.
I think this is something where operators miss the ball a lot, is why aren't you communicating that to your potential investors? So
good.
If they, because then they understand, they gain trust, and they know that you're willing to say no to a deal if it doesn't fit your criteria, but it invites them into your world.
Yeah.
And so that question of, what do you guys that should never even be a question.
Yeah, that's good.
Because you looked at a deal this week, you notify your investors and potential investors, hey, we just acquired this deal from a broker. We're taking a look at it. We'll keep you updated on it. A week later, hey, we decided to walk away from this deal because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so now you're educating your investors while informing them.
Yeah,
and you're not asking them for anything. You're just giving information.
That's good. That's good. I love that. I'm actually going to take that nugget, because I don't. I mean, there's a lot of deals that you're analyzing, you're underwriting, you're looking at the financial, like, this doesn't even make any sense. I don't even want to present it to my group. That's usually where my mind is. I don't even want to tell people about this, because, until something right. But they're wondering, okay, why is it 6 months since I've heard about a deal? Why it's a year since I've heard about a deal? Because we want to make sure it's right for our investors. We are financially, we're fiduciaries of people's investments, and we care we want to make sure that people are making a return. And you don't want the investor, the only time they hear from you is when you're like, hey, I got a new deal. Yeah.
Hey, I got a new deal. Because that
great.
Might be once every 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's really what we focus heavily on, is the nurturing piece and building that relationship. If that investor's only hearing from you once every 6 months, it's hard to build that relationship.
Yeah, that's good.
Where maybe that invitation to invest in a deal is every 6 months, but in between that, there's lines of communication, there's emails, there's text messages, there's webinars that you're hosting with CPAs and self-directed IRA professionals and attorneys.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that happens in between those deals, just to educate, let people know how great of an opportunity some of these can be.
No, that's good. And I fortunately do a lot of that from a passive investment flight club. That's the name that I do a lot of meetups under. I want to go back to the day in the life of a syndicator, because operator, however you want to, if you're operating a bunch of small 2 to 4 multifamilies, or you're operating 100 unit buildings, there is a lot of work that goes into acquiring and finding the deal, underwriting the deal, doing your due diligence on the deal once you've locked it up, being able to raise money if you're what we call syndication, or group investing, raising money from investors from your community, right? Jumping through all the hoops the bank is asking you to do, and all of the things, right? Working with contractors to estimate how all the things that you've analyzed and underwrote. And I'm going into detail here for purpose, right? Because there's so many pieces that are involved, and it's not a one-man show. It takes a team, and then once you've got it all locked up, you're managing the deal, right? Like, it's great that you got it, but you also got to make sure you manage it to the business plan that you prepared, right? Yeah. And there's always going to be things that kind of try to derail that progress. So systems is such a crucial part of that. What do you feel like are kind of some of the biggest hurdles, I guess, in a operator or syndicator's life. And there's many phases of that. And so we can maybe start with the first parts, which is just acquiring and raising funds to take it down. And keep in mind, it's on a timeline, right? Because you put earnest money down and all of those things. So kind of give people a little bit of just kind of what are some of the hurdles and why systems is so important in the life of an operator and syndicator.
It's really speed, and it starts with just trying to acquire the deal. And we just to clarify to your listeners, we operate a fund, so we focus on the capital. So as in regards to a lot of the operations of the deals, we know what we want to look for in those operators. So I think that's where we could provide a lot of value, but we ourselves don't operate those deals.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to sourcing the deal, because we have sourced some smaller deals before we decided to just focus on the capital, it starts with the broker relations. Like brokers, their entire job is to find deals and connect it with qualified buyers.
Yeah.
So having a good system to follow up with brokers consistently, sharing with them your buy box, your criteria, and if you're not consistently doing that, how do they know what deals to present to you?
Yeah.
And so it starts from the very beginning. And then when they start providing you deals, what's your underwriting process?
Yeah.
Who on your team is designated to do that? What documents do they need right away?
Yeah.
What's the timeline on the underwriting? Are you going to take 2 weeks to underwrite it? You're going to probably miss out on the deal at that point.
Yeah.
So not only having a good system to connect with the broker, but having those systems and those steps to effectively underwrite the deal.
Yeah.
Then once it checks your criteria, now you let your network know, hey, we're going to submit an LOI on this, a letter of intent.
Yeah.
And now you got to go to your network and start preloading them, getting them ready to invest in that deal.
Exactly.
And the whole idea of raising capital, that doesn't happen overnight. And what we saw far too often is people get so focused on acquiring the deal, all of a sudden somebody says yes to their purchase agreement, and they're like, oh crap, now I got to raise $2 million, $3 million for this deal.
Yeah.
So then now it's frantic for the next 45 to 60 days. Cause again, there's a timeline in all this. They accept the offer. You got 45, 60 days to close. Then people are in fight or flight for that next month or two, just trying to raise capital.
Yep.
So having a good system to nurture people way before that point.
Yeah.
And if people are like, oh yeah, I'm looking for a deal. Once I get a deal, then I'll raise capital. You're doing it backward. You're too late.
Yeah.
Like you need to be starting those relationships now. And if you have a good system in place with some good tools, that can take a lot of it off your plate so that you can go back to keep focusing on acquiring those deals and underwriting them. And then once you go through that and you sign the agreement, you go through your due diligence, my opinion is that the money is truly made in the operations of that deal.
Yeah.
So acquiring the deal, it feels great. You get a big dopamine hit, and then you got to manage that sucker for 3 to 5 years.
That part.
And that's really where the money is made.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's a whole other level
separate conversation
of
and absolutely.
Systems and processes to make sure you're doing that effectively.
Yeah.
What I will share is one of the operators we partner with, phenomenal. They're based in Phoenix, but they got deals in Phoenix, Dallas, and they're actually in Charlotte, North Carolina as well. And they have in-house management, which we like because they can keep a stronger pulse, a quicker pulse on changes that need to be made rather than using third party.
Yeah.
But when we were talking to them about their process of turning the units, renovating them, it just blew our mind.
Yeah.
What the system they had in place.
I gotta hear a little.
So this group particularly, they go in already knowing how many units they want to renovate. That's part of their business plan. And they source their materials from out of the country. It gets shipped to a warehouse. So they get discount pricing because they're doing so many units.
Yeah.
Then it goes to a warehouse in whatever market they're in, and they package everything on a single pallet that unit needs. And then from that warehouse, it gets delivered and plopped right into that unit when it's time to turn.
Yeah.
So then their turn team comes in, cuts open the wrapping, everything's there. They go boom, 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 boom. Same finishes on everything. And so it's just the system and process behind that. They're getting discount pricing because they're buying in bulk. Their team, it's the same process. So they train them, hey, this is the color of the walls. We're replacing the counters. This is the countertop. This is the fixture. And so those are the things that we look for when we go to invest with operators, because there's you can't control 100% of the deal.
For sure.
But there's ways to stack the deck.
Yep.
And so that's what we look for as fund managers, is how do these operators operate and how have they stacked the deck to weather any unknowns that will come up during the operation of the deal.
For sure. It's like In-N-Out versus Cheesecake Factory. Like In-N-Out, hey, we got burgers. That's it.
Burgers
or
and fries.
Cane's. It's chicken fingers and fries. That's all we're doing here. And you get it so good. Like, there's lines out the door for some of these restaurants. And so, so I get that. It's repeatable. What do you think are 3 hacks that if somebody was just starting out, and AI is also game changing right now. So that's phenomenally changing the game in the multifamily space. So before I jump to the question that I was going to jump to, how do you think AI from a system standpoint is changing the space of multifamily? How do you believe it's aiding operators or aiding people from an investment standpoint to help change that game?
I'll be honest, I probably don't use or utilize AI as much as I probably should. I feel like I'm kind of an old soul.
Hey, it's
heart.
All good.
And so I know there's people that are way more tech savvy in that regards to me, which is ironic because we have a software company. But and we will start integrating AI into that. What we've personally have used it for a lot is just outlines, information, responding to maybe some challenging emails or directing things to some potential investors. We did some professional headshots using AI. So honestly, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question too, because
that's cool.
We're more like playing around with it and trying to figure out how it fits into this. And since we don't focus a lot on the heavy operations side of the business, there's probably somebody that's integrating a lot more in regards to that. Now for us, we integrate a lot. For example, we just put together a quiz funnel. And so what that is somebody goes to your website and it's like, hey, what type of investor are you? And they click this button to take this quiz. There's 10 questions, and based on the responses they answer, then it spits out, hey, you're a moderate risk investor. Here are some things that you want to be aware of. These might be some types of asset classes that
you'd be interested in.
that you'd be interested in.
That type of stuff. That's good.
So that's a quiz funnel. That's the type of stuff we nerd out about, because that's all about like investor relations and helping that person along their journey. Because we're the guide, they're the hero. We're helping them along the journey.
That's good.
So in regards to that quiz funnel, this was like I had an idea of what I wanted. And so then I went into ChatGPT and I prompted it, and it spit out these questions and it weighted it based on the responses. And then I made some tweaks to it. And so what would have taken me hours to mentally think through, the foundation was there. Now, once I have that in front of me, then you can tweak it.
Bake it. For sure.
And so that's an example of how we've used it most recently. And so it's going to accelerate just about everything that it can touch.
Yeah, that's one way I use it too. Just as I have thoughts, I kind of like take my thoughts and take what I've baked and then kind of put it in there and see it's kind of like an assistant, if anything else,
And I think that's a way to look at it. I think some people want AI to completely
do their life. It's not going to do that.
And it might get to that point, but I think that's where a lot of people are dropping the ball too, especially in the investment world. You still got a handhold. There's still the importance of relationship. Absolutely. You got to have conversations like that.
Absolutely.
So you can't 100% automate everything online, via email, via social media. Like, you still need to have these conversations. So I think it can be a very good tool to help accelerate things and move things along and assist you, but not to replace you.
To human beings. No, understood that. And there's certain things that people always, especially now, it's funny because I was trying to order a pizza through Pizza Hut, and you got to go through, I can't remember the Grubhub or something like that. I can't remember I shouldn't even use names, but you got to go through an ordering system and it's all automated. And I'm like, I just want to talk to somebody. I made one mistake and it's looping me. And so, I definitely believe people still want that personal touch. So there's still that element of it. So in that space, since you're in that investor relations space, how do you balance the automation side with the personal touch side?
That's a great question. So we love automation. We absolutely do. And the only way you can truly scale as a business owner is to automate, delegate, or eliminate. So we always start with automation. Is there a process? Is there a friction point in our business that we can automate and not lose some of that personal connection?
That's good.
And the way we operate and the way we've designed our system to help other people is we automate as much as we can on the front end. And the reason being is because I believe the most valuable thing we have is our time.
Yep, absolutely.
And so we automate as much as we can on the front end as a way to qualify and disqualify who I'm going to spend my time with talking on the phone.
That's good.
And seeing if it's a good opportunity for them. Now, there's ways you still need to sprinkle in the personal touch. That's why we like doing like webinars and stuff. But that webinar might be live, but the registration, the reminders, the promotion of it, why can't all that be automated? Right.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things that you can look at your business and just determine like, hey, is this something I can automate? And you may not know.
Yeah.
And so try it.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're losing personal touch or people have a bad experience, unautomate it. Take it away. Try something else. Or maybe you automate this nurturing campaign for 30 days, but every 7 days you're calling that person or you're sending them a selfie video. Right.
Yeah.
So there's different things that you can do to sprinkle in.
No, that's good. That's good. I think we have gone to a space where we've gotten away from wanting to have that personal touch with people, and there's so many things taking people's attention away.
Yeah.
So you really have to stand out from all of the noise, and people are getting spammed. So there needs to be that level of personal touch. And I love that you talk about what are the things in your investment fund, in your investment kind of window, that is things that you could see that you can automate. There's not going to be everything that you can automate. There's going to be things that you personally, it's kind of high level, high quality things that you want to personally put your hand on, put your touch on. But what are all those other things? And so I think that's a good strategy for anybody, whether they're in single family, whether they're multifamily, whether they're a fund manager, syndicator, is looking through that whole journey from start to finish, whether it's talking with brokers and setting up appointments and setting up lunches and all of that's good stuff, all the way to managing the deal. What are those activities that are like, I do this all the time, it doesn't even take much mental, but it takes my time away. How can I automate those things and those high quality touch things? How can I, obviously keep those things on the plate?
And an example too is somebody might like opt into a webinar that we're hosting, and they attend. We can track that, and then maybe the call to action is to schedule a call with us.
Yeah.
We might have 2 or 3 text messages go out from a local number that sounds like us, like as though I was just sending it from my personal cell. But those text messages might be spread out over 5 to 7 days.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Tari, I saw that you attended our webinar. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions?
Yeah.
Right. That's standard follow-up that should be happening.
Yeah.
What I found because of my ADD is I'm terrible at it. I'd follow up maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
And then I would just move on. I'd forget because my brain's already...
You've got a million different things. Yeah.
And so building out some of those touch points, at least I know when somebody comes into that funnel, at least there's some touch points. And what's awesome is when my co-founder Paul and I really started integrating automation into our business, we started when it really like clicked is when I automated the scheduling for my podcast that I hosted.
Yeah.
Up to that point, we were manually reaching out to that person, asking for their bio and headshot, and if we didn't get it, we'd follow up a few days later, and it was taking a lot of just mind space.
Yeah.
We automated all of that, so if we didn't get it in a certain amount of days, they got some additional reminders. They couldn't schedule until we got the bio or the headshot, and so we were able to build this out. And then when we saw the follow-up, it's like, hey, Tari, we talked about doing the podcast, still don't have your bio and headshot. Would you mind sending that over? That was an automated message. And then you start responding to it. Yeah, so sorry, I've been tied up with work. I'll get that over this evening.
Yeah.
We're notified of the response. We see it. We can manually take over at any point.
Yeah.
But that follow-up was happening on our behalf.
Yep.
So we didn't have to.
Yep.
And so there's a
Exactly.
time and place for automation and AI,
For sure.
in my opinion. And you just got to
Absolutely.
figure out where it's most appropriate.
No, that's good. And it's really through your own journey, so it's very personal
Yeah.
for you, as far as what things, where are the biggest areas that you see automation could be put into place, especially in that sourcing or investor relations, touching base with people, which is really important when you're looking at acquiring a deal, right? Or even raising funds, right? Where do you think the biggest areas of opportunity are for investors to kind of automate?
So for us, again, it goes back to our time. Like if I only have 2 hours today to talk to potential investors, I want to make sure those investors are as close to investing with us rather than a new lead that just
Yep.
came in, because I don't know their intentions. We haven't had a call
Yeah.
with them yet. So one of the things that's been a game changer for us that we've built into our system and our solution, it's referred to engagement scoring. So we track when people are opening emails, when they're clicking emails, when they're scheduling calls, when they're submitting forms to download things on our website, if they're registering for a webinar, and we assign points to them based on what actions they're taking.
I like it.
And so we're not even notified. They don't even come into our sales pipeline, our potential investor pipeline,
Yeah.
until they hit a certain amount of points. And then once they do hit a certain amount of points, then we're notified, hey, Dallon, Tari's been engaging with you.
Yeah.
If you haven't scheduled a call, now I know, like, hey, let me
This might be a good time to follow up.
let me reach out to Tari, because she's been
Yeah.
opening, clicking. Obviously, there's some interest there. Find out what it
Yeah.
is. So then we can go into that call. I call you. To you, it's out of the blue. It's a cold call. To me, I've seen what you've been doing in our system,
Yeah.
and so I can go into that call much more confidently to just have a good conversation
Yeah. Yeah.
and learn about you. And to be very clear, that very first conversation, we don't talk about deals.
Yeah,
We don't
just,
talk about
hey, what's-
returns. We
yeah.
don't talk about. We don't pitch anything. It's
Yeah.
Tari, I see you've been in our system for a while. There must be a reason why.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you
Yeah,
got going on.
absolutely.
Right? Get into discovery mode
Yeah.
and start asking those
Yeah.
questions. And so at that point for us, that's when we start transitioning from automation to more of that personal touch.
Yeah, that's good.
So we automate as much as we can in the front part, because
good.
there's a lot of people that will waste your time.
Yeah.
A lot
No,
of
that's-
tire
that's-
kickers.
yep,
They just
tons.
want to learn, but they have no intention
Yep.
of doing anything.
Yep. No, there's tons of that. There's
So-
tons of that. So that's really good. So it's really already, you're almost like saying, like, when you go through a day and it's like, man, I got nothing accomplished today. It's analyzing, okay, what's the best way and use of my time? Even though there's, I could follow up with all of these individuals, or I could call this one individual that might change the needle
Yeah.
versus a lot of people who may not, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a really good one. That's a really good one. This is Lessons into Blessings, so we can't really end the show without talking about challenges or challenges along your journey, maybe challenges that cause you to kind of trigger you to go down the process of automation, right? So what things would you want a new investor to walk away with from some of the challenges, the lessons that you've been able to glean from a major challenge in real estate in your life? What is a takeaway on the automation side? Because I just want to stick to the process space. What's something that they could glean from something that you got frustrated you, and you've been able to learn from it and turn it into a blessing?
I think it's easy to over automate things. And that's one thing I start nerding out about and I get excited about. It's like, oh, we can automate this, we can automate that. And so you start putting together these elaborate systems and plans to automate before you really test it. And then you send somebody through it and it blows up. They're supposed to get 5 emails over the span of a few weeks, and they get them all within 5 minutes of each other because there was something that didn't quite work. And so there's a lot of those challenges that Paul and I had worked through when we were developing Capitalist Pro that we experienced, so our users don't have to. So we provide a lot of counsel and guidance on them in regards to that automation. And I think what you got to be very, very careful of is this is a people business. And so the moment somebody catches wind that it's an AI or an automated response, you could potentially damage that relationship.
Yeah.
So again, I think there's definitely some etiquette around it,
Yeah.
and knowing when to do it and when not to do it.
That's good.
Because you want to make sure they're not getting these automated responses from two different workflows and things you have going on. Because then they're like, oh, okay, I'm just another person.
Just a number.
I'm just a number.
Yeah.
So again, I think being very, very careful and strategic on how you integrate it in,
Yeah.
and then when you mix in that personal touch.
Yeah,
And that's one thing we've never forgotten.
Yeah.
One of my favorite hacks to do is take a 30-second selfie video and
Yeah.
send it to somebody.
Yeah.
It literally takes 30 seconds of your time.
Yep.
You send it to that person. Hey, I was thinking about you. I know a couple weeks ago we were talking about this, or this.
Yeah.
Or I saw that you attended our webinar. There must be a reason why. I just want to introduce myself to you,
Yeah.
put a face to the name. I would
Yeah.
love to connect with you further.
Yeah.
And so you can't nor should you ever automate 100% of it.
I get that.
And I don't know, even if somebody had told us that, I still think we had to go through the mistakes we made for it to really understand.
Yeah.
And now we do what we can to help educate our users
No, that's good.
and the etiquette around it.
That's good. I think, and I learned this early on when starting Thayer's Room, when I started that business, is that, someone asked about, what does your brand represent? At the end of the day, people are signing up to do business with you,
Yeah.
right, as an individual. So they want to know you. They want to know the individual and not just, okay, what does your company stand for? I mean, they can find a million companies that do, not a million, okay, but they can find a lot of companies that do similar things and similar in that space. It's like, I really want to know about who's the individual behind the business. So I think we can get caught up, even as, just a planner that I am, you can get caught up in just, everything's got to be, you got to dot the I's, dot the T's. There is a personal element of bringing that personal element to the business that's going to far outweigh if you had all these things in a row.
Yeah. And you've got to mix it in. Like a perfect example, we experienced this very recently. There's this group we've been trying to connect with, to partner with our software. They have a community and they have students that are learning about multifamily and real estate. And both Paul and I had been emailing them, texting 2 people on their team, trying to get in contact with them, and it wasn't happening, right? And some of that follow-up was automated, some of it was manual, but it was through text, email, things like that.
Yeah.
And so we came across this idea, and we've implemented it a few times now, where we took a shoe, put it in into a regular box, and mailed it out to that person. And we had a little note saying, hey, this shoe is to represent, we got 1 shoe in the door. We believe there's a lot of value we could provide to you and your company.
Yeah.
We'd love to work with you. Hope you can appreciate our creativity and humor.
Right.
And give us an opportunity to get the second shoe in the door. Right.
That's
so
a good one.
we got an email a couple days later from them saying, you sent me a shoe. So that was a personal touch that we integrated in after some of our previous automations and manual touch points weren't working. And we've had great conversations with that group, and we're going to be working with them in the near future.
Love it.
So,
love it.
Again, I think finding what areas you can automate, and more so on the front end, and it's really to qualify and disqualify to save your time.
Absolutely.
And to protect your time, so that way you're spending it your time best,
most valuable time
with the right people.
Absolutely.
That you can create a mutually beneficial relationship.
That's
with.
good. I love that. Tell our audience how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, social media, Instagram, LinkedIn is where we're probably the most active. Not as active as probably should be, because we're head down in the trenches right now. But we actually have if anyone's interested in our system, in our software, we have a webinar coming up actually. And so what they can do is they can text the word capital to 623-624-1190. Okay. 623-624-1190.
Good stuff.
If they text that word capital, they'll get a link through automation to register for the webinar. But that's a perfect example, right? I don't manually need to text you a link to register for that webinar.
That's good stuff. I like it.
And so if they text that number, they'll get a link, they can register for it, and we go way more into depth of our systems and processes for around raising capital.
That's good stuff. Well, thanks for being on our show today and giving people valuable nuggets. Until next time, fam, stay blessed.
Awesome.